Oh, speaking of other stuff I have in my tabs and liberals who aren't really liberal, they just want to argue with leftists. Have you guys seen the Contrapoints interview? I'm really torn on this because on one hand it's 3 hours long and I literally can't sit down for that long. I don't want to. You can't make me. But I'm sure there's some good stuff there. No drama. I mean, it's not just like obviously I personally dislike ContraPoints, but it's not really about that. Like there is something interesting about one of the main lefty YouTubers, not like leftist socialists, but you know, like progressive YouTubers, like just devolving into this weird, spiteful, I'm only going to comment on the genocide in Gaza in the context of how lefties on Twitter make me feel when they ask me to comment on it. Like, that kind of stuff. Progressive on gender and nothing else. I saw a tweet today. I thought it was very apropos. Imagine pitching yourself as an expert on de-radicalization and then allowing yourself to be radicalized by the internet into centrism. Contra is very smart. She should just log off Twitter. Well, intelligence, intelligence is a process, not an attribute, You can have a lot of gray matter up here, but it doesn't really matter if you allow yourself to be driven by bad emotional impulses. You can be intelligent, but like totally fucking spiteful. A million examples of this. Smart people, they mentally degrade. I watched it all. Contra was so important to me when I transitioned, and I still value her, but she's just so wrong on politics right now. This post is what broke me. That's a YouTube title right there. It's buried under layers of insincerity, but there is like a truthful sentiment to the idea that a lot of Democrats or centrists, again, I don't really think Natalie's acting out of liberalism here or an interest in liberal values, really don't have a vision for how to make the world a better place. You know what I mean? Like, they get mad at lefties because lefties they think that the vision they have is naive or ineffective or it's a bad direction to go in, but they don't really have like a model. They just think the world's in decline, but they want to fight it out anyway. I don't really know. Can you do a Contra segment? Many people are unaware of what happened. I was walking past ContraPoints at TwitchCon, and while she was live streaming, I shoulder checked her. And it was really embarrassing for her because, like, you could tell from the way her live stream camera rocked, but she really, like, I wasn't trying to, we were just passing each other in a hallway. But ever since then, things have not been the same. Yeah, remember that? Yeah, it was pretty, yeah. You really need to stop doing that. I'm sorry. The clips.
I think that there's also another problem with the framing.
I do like the shirt though.
Of Zionism as like this kind of unique satanic evil is that it's like there's a lot of nationalism in the world. Like there's a lot of countries that have nationalist or ethno-nationalist ideology. This is like hardly that have nationalist or ethno-nationalist ideology. This is like hardly a specifically Zionist thing. So
yeah, but usually countries that have an ethno-nationalist ideology aren't being given money, weapons, and unlimited political support from the United States actively, publicly, loudly, while they engage in multiple wars with adjacent countries and carry out one, possibly two genocides at once, right? I mean, it is true ethno-nationalism is pretty common around the world, but, that would be like equating any ethno-nationalist country to Nazi Germany in 1939. Like, yeah, ethno-nationalism is not that uncommon. This is pretty uncommon, right?
But they've got to...
It's uncharitable, right? Because it's like, here's a 3-hour interview, here's a little snippet. Like, people cut out the unfavorable parts. If you talk to me for 3 hours and you cut out the parts that looked most unfavorable, I feel like you'd only get the negative bit. You would be able to find something you could take issue with, I think. But I don't really know how else to engage with it. Also, that was a pretty dumb thing of her to say. 1 second. My beloved partner is making food loudly. They shaking the maracas. Or maybe like, I don't know, a packet of dried seasoning.
Particular, because of the history of World War II, the contrast is so high here because it was basically I had this conversation with Catherine Liu that one of the reasons why anti-Semitism is like so aggressively on the rise now is because all of our education system was built around the horrors of World War II and specifically the Holocaust. And to see the people who were the victims of that now enact, not that it's at the same scale, but a kind of similar.
They would if they could. Also, I don't really know. It seemed like the reason anti-Semitism is on the rise right now is because the American and Israeli governments are both screaming, if you don't support us killing people, you're anti-Semitic. And I think a lot of people are starting to like have their politics shifted by that very insistent position. So I don't know. I mean, it's very unfortunate, but I really think it's a pretty straightforward cause and effect here, you know?
Cruelty invalidates all of the kind of liberal education that we were brought up with in these progressive values, because
Well, I also think
that was
it's
the
like,
source of it.
I think it sort of threatens the kind of Manichaean idea of like that the world can be divided into oppressors and victims, right? The idea that there is no like ontological victim class, but that victims can become oppressors, right? That, you know, even worse, that like a
I don't think leftists are confused by this. I think Zionists are confused by this because Zionists talk about modern day Jews as though they're still in the damn camps. Like, people will defend Israel talking as though IDF soldiers are just fucking broke out of Auschwitz-Birkenau, when like, no, they're actually, you know, running have incredibly wealthy, militarized, ethno-nationalist apartheid state. It's kind of, you know, a little bit of time has passed since then. I don't think lefties have an issue with understanding the idea that Jews were victimized back in 1939, and well, obviously before then and since then as well, but it's obviously largely, you know, in the Holocaust, and that now the current dynamic, they are rather the oppressors in this specific situation.
successful nationalists, you know, that a formerly marginalized or oppressed group can have a successful liberation movement. That
I don't know. It all just feels so 101 to me. I don't know. I don't know. It's like that post she made where she broke, I don't know, what was it, 2 years of silence on Gaza, and it was just whining about how the online left is ineffective. It just feels like there's not a lot of thought, or like all the thought is getting filtered through the initial bias of, you know, woe is me, why are people being uncharitable to me? So everything that follows after that is like an ego trip. You know, it's not really a novel analysis, I guess. I mean, you might build up to it over 3 hours, but again, I'm not watching that whole thing. This is the clip I've seen everyone posting about. It's this clip, not the other clip. This is the one I've seen everyone posting about.
So I think we're arguing about, like, you know, the topic of abolishing capitalism. Is this a serenity problem? Is it a courage problem? Is it a wisdom problem? I think a lot of my critics on the left think it's a courage problem, right? They think that I am a sort of like cowardly sellout lib shit or whatever.
She said it. I don't really care whether or not Contrapoints wants to abolish capitalism. My issues are mostly the way she's handled the whole Gaza business. It's not really about. I mean, she was never a socialist. You know, I didn't really expect that of her. So that's not. I'm not interested in that, I guess.
Whereas I think that they have a wisdom problem in that they are trying to, or a serenity problem, I'm not sure which. Like, they're trying to change a thing that's not gonna change. Like, not realistically in any kind of like short or middle time frame.
I feel like I'm being unfair because it's just a clip from a larger interview. But yeah, that's a really reactionary sentiment. You could say the same thing about opposing monarchy, right? If you're an advocate for something that's good and you're an advocate for something you think needs to change, the merits of your argument aren't necessarily dictated by the viability of an immediate change in that direction, you know? There were advocates for something approximating democracy for thousands of years in Europe before it really took root, you know, in the post-Enlightenment period. It's good to believe in good things. But again, I don't really care whether or not Contra believes in socialism or capitalism or whatever else. It's uninteresting to me. Honestly, as far as I'm concerned, and it's a little bit like, I guess, conceited, I suppose, but I think that right now, if you are an economic liberal, like in the current day, right now, seeing where it's led us and how the world is, it seems, very quickly unwinding due to a power imbalance that is a necessary byproduct of this economic system. I think that you haven't done enough thinking to come to the table. You're at the kids' table. Like, I think that you, at the very least, need to be capitalism skeptical, and that gets you the seat at the adults' table. and we can talk about like how or why or whatever else. But if you're unironically right now in this moment looking at the liberal world order collapsing because inevitably we deferred so much power and responsibility to oligarchs who have a separate set of material interests, if you're looking at this and you're going like, well, I don't think there's an alternative really, then I don't know, I guess you haven't really thought about it very much. It's called capitalist realism. You know what I mean? That's just not that interesting of a conversation to me, I suppose. She doesn't need an alternative in her eyes that's making her money. No, I disagree. I don't think she's not a grifter. Or at the very least, like, that's not the main motivating thing. It's spite, man. It's spite. It's over the past couple of years, she has grown increasingly embittered by the behavior of people on the internet, mostly Twitter, who are to her left. She's even admitted this. Yeah, very online behavior. It's the same thing. I mean, Destiny did this, J.K. Rowling did this. It's just sometimes people, though different character here, right? Obviously, Destiny kind of enjoys the fire a lot more. But you know, let me think about this charitably, okay? Because I've been subject to a lot of online harassment. I don't know if you guys noticed, but I have. And speaking charitably, right? Contra has made a lot of good videos, and Contra has made a lot of good arguments. And Contra has, as a response to those good arguments, received a lot of very stupid, very bad faith criticisms, often from the right, but also often from like bad faith or obnoxious Twitter lefties, right? The kinds of people who blast ear rape Soviet anthem, the kind of people who own Yushankas, or, you know, the annoying types, right? Woke scolds, online tankies, those kinds, okay? And all of this has been exacerbated by the fact that Contra is a trans woman. So obviously you've got a lot of like additional mileage. Like I'm a white guy, so a lot of the stuff that comes my way, I have a degree of sort of social impermeability, but it's not always the case, right? So you get beleaguered with the bad faith arguments over and over, and you get bitter and you get cynical. Keep in mind, there was a point in time on this channel where I genuinely thought that one of the big threats to progress towards the left was like the online woke scold. I think that was misguided of me. I was wrong, and for years now I haven't really done that, and I don't really take them that seriously, and I think as a consequence my analysis has gotten better. But I think that Contra has to an extent fallen into that trap, where she sees the world through the lens of her Twitter interactions. So when she sees the Gaza genocide not as a heartless slaughter conducted by very powerful, very influential people in Israel and in America, you know, the extension of an ethno-nationalist death cult, she sees it through the framework of the worst Twitter lefties and how they talk about it. The kinds of people who would go, I don't know, did you see in that latest Contra video, she had a snack cup behind her, and it was what's the Israeli hummus company? You know what they're at the grocery store. I'm just trying to do an example here. You know what I'm talking about? Sabra. You could see inside of her trash can, there was an empty Sabra cup in there. What do you think she meant by this? Contra fucking hates Palestinian people, right? Like this, like, you know, the stereotype of this. So she now views this very real life genocide through the lens of those people. So when she finally posted about it, she was talking about how, like, actually the online left is the real problem here. Like, the way we've engaged with it is the real issue, and that's what she can handle, so that's what she engages with. Obviously that's very stupid, but that's how you get to that mental process. It's not grifting. It's like you know, in her twisted brain. Yes, to the twisted brain of the Joker, parentheses Contra. Yeah. Thank you for this nuance of a take. I just, it's worth noting though that the process I'm describing right now has made her a little retarded, and that being smart is something you have to push for always. It's not something you just are. Being smart, being rational, it's climbing a mountain. It doesn't matter how athletic you are. If you stop climbing, you stop climbing. So it's like her brain is melting. But that's why it's melting. You know? I think that's my guess. I mean, it's not like I talked to her. Yeah, you gotta use it or lose it. Your noggin. Libs will be libs at the end of the day. Well, I'm not really talking about liberalism necessarily. Lefties have also had their brains melted, and lefties or liberals, right? It's just, it's a way of dealing with engagement online, you know? Not a good way, but it is a way. I'm not excusing it. I think that she's being bad, but it's important to understand how this stuff works, or like what leads people to it, you know? 3 hour and 20-minute god dang video. Yes, funny rhetorician, I remember. Live from Tel Aviv. Oh no. People are, I think one of the reasons why I think that I'm still relevant, and I'm quite relevant. I don't know if you've noticed, you know, my channel does okay. I think one of the reasons that I've been able to maintain my relevancy in this space, in spite of the fact that, and let's think about this, okay? For one, I am very ostracized. Like, especially within the online left. Very negative biases against me from a lot of people, right? And also, I don't really do much deliberate channel growth. I have deliberately avoided doing any kinds of engagement with other people outside the context of canvassing, which is not really like a huge channel booster, for years. And in spite of that, I remain relevant. I think a big part of that is because, for all my faults, and there are certainly faults, I think that I have not let the internet brain poison seep in too much. You know? I think that, like, in spite of all the antagonism and the back and forthing, I have willfully sort of extracted myself from the morass of debate and drama-oriented content, and the sort of vine trap that has, you know, pulled so many people down, and through framing everything in this hyper online context. You know, I think I've done well in that respect, and I'm very happy that I have. Antagonism, by and large, does not make you smarter. Usually, it forces you to double or triple down on bad positions, or pantomime. You have to make theater out of what you believe. You know, I think that usually people tend to kind of get locked into their positions over time. I think a good example of this, to sort of direct the energy the other way, would be Hassan. Hassan was obviously wrong on Ukraine, has remained wrong in his initial analysis and a lot of his assessments about, you know, NATO prompting the war or whatever else. But because it's like a pride position and there's so much riding on it, you know, you can't shift off of it, right? So it remains a thing. He has to, like, pretend that he was right all along by shifting the definition of what it means to have been right on that topic. Vaush, you did fail when you assumed the only reason that Minnesotan locals might not want Will Stancil in their ICE Watch group chat was far-left purity gatekeeping. That is a very specific thing that you are upset with me about, but I don't think it has any relevance. It doesn't have much to do with what I'm talking about right now. How is that a doubling down on a prideful position? I'm just mad. I just remembered and disappointed me because it was a bad impulse. I just worked with the information that I had. I still believe that, by the way. It's because if Hassan does admit to fault, his fucking antagonists try to use it to do a victory lap, then say, and so everything else he must have said was wrong too. Right. Well, and that's the problem with the environment, right? Like, if we narrow it down to the big, I guess, like the big antagonistic engagement here, which would be Destiny and Hassan, if Hassan did retract his position on Ukraine, or sort of not retracted, but like explained why what he said was wrong and went over it, I don't really think that it would be, I don't think the response from Destiny's community would be, oh, he's learning, he's going in a positive direction. It would just be doubling down on the spite, you know what I mean? It would be like, finally, we've pressured him into having to give up on this position, now let's go after this one. Or like, so he's trying to win people back after years of antagonism feeds antagonism, right? It's not a system that's meant to produce good results. It's a system that's meant to produce, you know, entertainment. And spite is extremely entertaining. You get my point. You get my point. It doesn't like lead people towards growth, in my opinion.
The West has fallen. Why? Because of like degeneracy.
That's
And the evidence of
fucking
that
true.
is often like look at modern architecture compared to a that's the appeal of the vigilante, is that the vigilante like reclaims the ability to punish from a legal system that has a monopoly on violent punishment. Yeah. And I think in some ways it also comes from the lack of things like public executions, where there's popular sort of participation, at least as spectators, in this kind of people come together to attack a guilty person. I think it also social media kind of works this way too. Like, I mean, way too much has been said about.
Why are people in chat being confused? She's describing a process, not endorsing it.
Cancel mobs or whatever on Twitter, but I do think that it's a similar.
It's an execution in the public square.
Well, it's kind of a public execution.
The digital public
square. It's a
square.
digital execution, and
drawn and quartered on social media.
I think sometimes you could categorize this as justice. Sometimes it's almost closer to like human sacrifice, which is a French philosopher, René Girard, who talks about.
I'm familiar.
Scapegoating, and as this like very central like a facet of religious life, or like most major religions in the ancient world practiced either animal or human sacrifice. And then over time, that has kind of declined, in part as religion internalizes that type of aggression, right? So in Christianity, Jesus is a human sacrifice. He is. It's not, an ongoing sacrifice of living people, but that's supposed to be a kind of substitute sacrifice. I spent a lot of time thinking about exactly that question, because I think a lot of things go into it. I think one is a kind of people's identity becomes oppositional. Like when you identify yourself as a radical, you think of yourself as anti-establishment. That is who you are. That is the basis of all of your moral principles, which sort of also implies that you don't want to be the establishment, or you don't want to even be associated with the establishment. So one thing I get very frustrated with people self-styled radicals is that even when the left does have victories, the victory is then immediately spun into some kind of disappointment.
They don't actually want to be in power.
They don't want to be in power. So like, I mean, you've seen it also already with like, well, we saw it with AOC and with Bernie Sanders, where like, I feel like those people were the sort of champions of the left 8 years ago. And now, like, oh my God, like I saw like when your wonderful mayor, Zoran Mamdani, got elected, like he posted some picture of him with Bernie Sanders and AOC, and immediately like the faction of the online left that I'm discussing here, the reaction was like, wow, like I can't believe Zoran Mamdani would associate with these like genocidal Zionists.
Wow.
Right? And it's like, well, what did you expect him to do?
Is she only capable of punching left Jesus Christ? It does, it's because like she's not wrong in identifying that there's a negative tendency here, but like, and I understand that part of it is just like what you're asked in the context of the interview, but very minimal criticism, if any, for the like if we're going to talk about impropriety and bad behavior in Zoran Mamdani's election, the liberals take the ticket, man. Like big time. Every news organization, debate moderators, everyone accusing Mamdani of anti-Semitism every time he breathed, Cuomo losing the Democratic primary, and then like a fucking loser coming back in the independent and getting the consolidated support of many Democrats and the Republican Party directly by Trump. Like that was an insane level of like deep state fucking, tag teaming on Zoran Mamdani there. So again, I'm not saying that there aren't, lefties on Twitter or whatever who go, ooh, Zio Mamdani, but they're also irrelevant. I just don't understand the need to focus on them. I just feel like I grew out of this like 2 years after I started doing content. I don't really understand the obsession with like, it's like a infinitesimally small fraction, and a lot of them aren't even in New York. Like Mamdani's New York his popularity in the city that he leads as mayor has only gone up over time. So, I mean, maybe in the future this ends up being more of a problem, I guess. It's just telling when you choose to focus all of your time and analysis on, well, did you know that lefties on Twitter were bad about this? Yeah, I know. They often are. What about the world, man? What about the whole world out there? The cosmos?
Politician
have
not
no
ever
allies.
The big
allies any other
picture.
politician. Like that's not how this works. I mean, and in some ways, like what they're horrified by is participation in politics itself. Because that means a kind of compromise of their virtue ethics. And I find it so preposterous because a lot of these people also are claiming to be Marxists. But like, so you would think Marxism is like based in some kind of understanding of like, material conditions, but they're virtue ethicists. They're virtue ethicists slurping as Marxists.
They're not materialists by any stretch of the imagination.
And it's very frustrating.
Yeah, if they not to harp on this, but like
that
if they
virtue ethics and historical materialism aren't mutually exclusive. Those are different things. Historical materialism is a lens of political analysis. Virtue ethics is like a epistemol. Those are different things. It's not an okay.
They ever got into the position of power, it would mean the death of that subcultural identity, which is actually their primary drive.
So it's a kind of political like hipsterism in the sense of like you like the band until it's popular, and then you can't like it anymore because the popularity of it. Left alliance. By 2024, it came to seem that it was impossible. This, I think, to me, is a very black pilling for me. Because it seems like it's less possible to make a coalition than I used to. Because in 2017 I had this moment of optimism, right? I had been, full disclosure. I mean, I'm sure that people already know this, but I was like a Hillary Clinton supporter in 2016. I mean, in part, not that I didn't like, not that I disliked Bernie. I did like him, right? But I thought at the time, you know, I had worked on Obama's campaign in 2012, and so I remember just how like I used to canvass, I used to do phone calls, and just to get people to want. I was like, we're trying to give you health care, and it was like pulling teeth to get people to be like, oh, but it's socialism, and he's gonna make death panels, and it's Islamic communism, and it's you know what I mean? Like just and we're talking about the Affordable Care Act, not at all a radical piece of legislation, right? But like people have been so like this like anti-socialist strain of American paranoia was so strong that I felt that Bernie Sanders could not win. Then Hillary Clinton lost, and that caused me to rethink things. I was like, well, okay, my intuitions may be wrong because I would not have thought Donald Trump would win. Maybe I was also wrong about Bernie Sanders, and so I kind of moved a bit to the left then and felt like, look, we can maybe have a kind of leftist Democratic Party, and then AOC like emerged, and that was very promising in 2018. Then in 2020, of course, Bernie really lost the primary, and I think that I felt like, okay, maybe this is not translating into electoral success.
Maybe it would be more prudent to focus on policies, like what people want for the country, rather than merely the politicians representing them. Like there were problems with Bernie's 2020 campaign, but if you take a look at what Democrats want, like the things that they want, you have a very consistent slate of progressive policies that they seem interested in, you know, which Biden did not deliver on. So I mean, maybe it'd be better to look back. There are so many factors that can confound when you're looking at specific candidates.
So much. And then by 2024, I felt
he lost in a fair fight. He didn't get swindled by the DNC.
I mean,
like he did in 2016.
I also personally think the claims of him being swindled by this DNC are somewhat overstated.
Maybe not swindled, but like at least the institutional power in the DNC was so sizable and potent that the insurgent populist campaign couldn't overcome how much hegemonic power it had.
No. Like he was actually rat-fucked. Like insiders within the DNC acknowledged they biased internal processes to favor Hillary Clinton. There were resignations over it. It's not. This isn't arguable. You can't. There's no gaslighting on this. Like it's all on the public record. We know that happened.
Could pull different levers and get people to show up in South Carolina and this kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true to some extent. I mean, I think I guess I get a little bit annoyed when people overstate that, like, it was rigged against Bernie and that, like, well, like, Hillary Clinton did win the popular vote by more than 3 million votes. Like, I mean, yes, Hillary Clinton has spent her career building institutional...
It feels like the point of this diatribe is to reinforce through repetition the idea that the dreams of the left are naive and can't happen, and they're not popular enough, and coalition building is impossible, and they need to cede their ground to the liberals or whatever, even though the average lefty, the average Bernie supporter, like, did vote for Hillary. Like, the average Bernie supporter in 2020 did vote for Biden. but like no engagement at all with the problems that liberals have had delivering on their promises, or the fact that they often underpromise, that there are things that the Democratic population wants, the voters, that are promised by progressives but not by liberals. That's what we're dealing with right now, right? If Bernie Sanders ran in 2028, and he won't, and I hope he doesn't, and he won't, you know, please God, do not. If he's even alive then, you know, he would lose because he's a billion years old. But if Bernie Sanders ran on a ticket of like ending support for Israel and then he lost, would that be an indication that the average Democrat doesn't want a candidate who supports ending aid to Israel? No. The average Democratic voter does want to end our aid to Israel. The average, and with every passing month, the gulf only gets wider. You have to look at what people want and then try to build candidates around those virtues. Electability, but also building a legacy. Because electability doesn't mean jack shit if you get in and then do nothing. That's what Biden did. Like, Biden's presidency just felt like a continuation of the Trump era. Now we get Trump as a dominant cultural force for, at a minimum, 12 years, you know? You need to use the power that you get.
Or in the Democratic Party, Bernie Sanders just showed up that year, basically, because he's an independent in Vermont.
Right. So you, as you were saying, your politics progressed after that that failure in 2020.
But then I kind of got disillusioned with it, especially when it came to 2024, and I felt that it was basically like desperately urgent to vote for Kamala Harris, and I was not getting a lot of aggressive pushback on that idea from the left. So I felt kind of politically isolated by the thing, by feeling that
you should be upset with Kamala Harris for openly endorsing a genocide, continuing to support it, endorsing Biden's position on it, which was one of endorsement. And also the DNC deliberately not taking information on when people weren't voting for Kamala Harris because of her support for Israel. Like, the DNC not only committed to its position on Israel, the one that it had through Biden, but additionally committed to not changing its behavior, even if they knew that supporting Israel would cost them the election, which it seems like it kind of did. They didn't take that information, and they have tried to keep the DNC failure autopsy secret, and then the information got out, and wow, a lot of people didn't vote for Kamala Harris because she was openly, contemptuously supportive of Israel through a genocide that the average Democrat thought was happening. Like, in public opinion had already turned by then. Like, you should be upset with them. That is the leadership in the Dems failing you. You can rail all you want at, oh, how dare lefty voters not get more enthusiastic about voting for a candidate that was endorsing a genocide and enabling its continuation. Sure, whatever. Like, how is that their fault? I guess it seems to me like a very juvenile way of looking at politics, where you just stomp your feet and get mad at voters for not getting behind such a disagreeable and disgusting political position when you otherwise are so obsessed with electability. Why should we vote for Hillary Clinton over Bernie? Because he's more, or she's more electable. Why should we vote for Biden over Bernie? Because he's more electable. Okay, well, here's a problem with electability. Kamala Harris demonstrated an unelectable tendency. Why are we only in favor of the centrist Democrats when they demonstrate electability, but then when they demonstrate the opposite of electability, we then blame the people beneath that? It literally doesn't make any sense. It seems like a long, convoluted, incoherent way of just constantly finding a reason to blame the left. Always the Twitter lefty, always the Twitter lefty. And there's a lot of people who are locked in on this dynamic, you know? A lot of them. Just because they're pro-establishment. It's worth remembering that in spite of how much contempt I direct towards Americans who don't share my beliefs, and you all might remember this, by and large, I really don't rail against non-lefty Dems that much for the results of the presidential elections. Bernie Sanders losing in 2016 and in 2020, and I guess nothing could have really happened in 24 because, you know, Biden insisted on running again, which was also a massive fucking failure that you should be mad about. The Democrats allowed him to do that. They allowed him to be shielded from the press and from inquiry as his brain melted, and then only like panicked and flipped onto Kamala after the pathetic first debate. That was insane. And it was all like borderline premeditated. They chose that. They allowed him to prioritize his ego over the future of the party. Anyway, do I get mad at Democrat voters who don't agree with me? Yeah, of course I do, obviously. But like, if let's say that Mamdani lost, okay? Let's say that Cuomo won. Would I direct a lot of anger at Democrats in New York who didn't vote for Mamdani but did vote for Cuomo? Yes, I would, for sure. But would I, for a decade afterwards, continue to commiserate along those lines? Oh, they were betrayed? No. Especially if Mamdani had made critical mistakes in how he handled his campaign. Hillary Clinton, Biden, and Kamala Harris did not run flawless campaigns. Not even close. There were, especially obviously with Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris, massive issues with them, their personalities, their positions, and the behavior of the DNC. Large problems. If I really wanted Hillary Clinton or Kamala Harris to win, I would be more invested in criticizing them for those failures. I've criticized Bernie Sanders for his failures. I've criticized him for failing to secure good endorsements leading up to 2016-2020. His bad selection of campaign leadership in many cases. For his rhetoric, not like adapting enough, like he kept it too consistent between 16 and 20. I feel like he ran by and large a better campaign than Kamala Harris did or Hillary Clinton did. But, you know, if you want to win, you have to make your candidates electable. You have to make them appealing. You have to shape their positions. You have to make them good. You have to give us good candidates. What is the point of just bemoaning the existence of this microscopic sub-community of people online, the internet leftist, as if that was the determining factor? You think the average Dearborn resident is an internet lefty? They're probably like a slightly left of center Arab, well, the ones who didn't vote for Kamala at least, who were just disgusted at her position on Israel, which is a very foreseeable outcome politically. Anyway. I don't know. It just frustrates me that so many Democrats are obsessed with directing all the blame at a very small community of online people who really put a chip on their shoulder, but statistically are not that relevant in politics in America. But then they direct no blame or attention to the behavior of the massive DNC, the party that makes massive mistakes, that demonstrates contempt for its voters, that represents policies that don't reflect the interests of the majority of their constituents, that time and time again engages in hilariously bad decision making. The Democratic Party right now is more unpopular with Democrats than it ever has been for all the history of the party. And still, are we to blame the internet lefty for this? 100,000 people on Twitter are responsible for the Democrats having record low polling with their own people? A party of 100 million people, and that's who we're blaming? Come on! It's just very trite. It's boring. I know I'm shadowboxing a bit. She didn't say all the stuff that I said here, but that's the tendency that I notice with this constant this pity party. Oh, the Twitter lefties. The Twitter lefties don't like me either, man. They hate me. Probably more than you. Well, maybe you're more in she's more in like the microscope, you know, she's in like the focus right now, but yeah, I'm just rambling. I don't know. It's just, I wish she would focus more on this, you know, because she's closer to being a centrist Democrat than most people whose positions I sometimes respect. And the Democratic Party right now is historically unpopular for reasons that to any person with any political education should be really, 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 really obvious. The Democratic base does not feel as though their needs are being fought for, are being serviced, are really being defended by the Democratic Party. And if you think that schism, which is causing so much alienation, so much apathy, that schism's being caused by this incredibly small, fractious group of hyper left Twitter tankies, you are delusional. You are actually you are as delusional as the people who think that, like, I don't know, Groypers run the GOP. Are they like a portion of it? Are there some of them present, you know, in the Republican Party? I mean, absolutely, yeah. But they are probably a fraction of a single percentage point of the Republican base. That is not the tendency you need to be focusing on. All right, I'm done. So frustrating. Like, come on. We do need way better candidates. I just can't believe that people, like, unironically are trying to argue against the Twitter lefty that Kamala Harris was a good candidate, as though she didn't lose on her own merits and the problem wasn't with a broader swath of Democratic voters. You know? Like, just admit you don't fucking care what the voters want. I do. I admit it. I fully admit. The average voter is a fucking moron. I support people in positions based on what I think is morally good. But I understand that I need to strike a compromise between the hyper-ideal perfect candidate who I think would do everything I think is based in red-pilled and the candidate who could potentially win. And I'm willing to acknowledge concessions have to be made in both directions. You might notice that Mamdani has not directed a portion of the NYPD police budget towards firing missiles at Tel Aviv. He hasn't done everything that I've wanted. He's done a lot, but he's found a way to balance it out with electability. You have to do it too. You also have to do it. You also have to find that balance. What do you think is morally good? What do you think is worth fighting for? What positions, what principles do you think the Democratic Party exists to front? Abortion rights, LGBT rights, better healthcare, corporate regulations? What specifically do you want them to fight for? And then how do you take that package of values and then funnel it through the mantle of electability? How do you then take that and make it possible? But you have to have those positions. Often, like, I don't even know how much Contra wants Israel to stop what it's doing. I think she says it's a genocide, but also, like, the left is unrealistic for thinking that they should talk about. I don't even know. Why is it so hard for people to say what they believe in, man? I don't get it. I don't get it. They're so smug over how pragmatic they are. No, yeah, it's literally like Twitter lefties advocate for firebombing a Walmart. They ignore my superior strategy of winning an election, and then you lose an election. We're the kings of pragmatism, and then you lose to Trump, a drooling fucking retard who can't do math and shits his diapers every day. Well, what phenomenal. Truly the most competent political masterminds ever, you know? Biden, who can barely talk, insists on running for a second term. Nobody in the DNC stops him until it's too late. You scramble to find a candidate, Kamala Harris, a shape-shifting lizard reptile ghoul person who can't hold consistent positions between elections, who then promises to do everything Biden did, but more right-wing, not a wizard. I misspoke. I wish she was a wizard. A person whose only policy position is do what Biden did, but more right-wing by hiring more Republicans to my cabinet or whatever. And then she loses, and we're supposed to take lessons on electability from you? Mamdani is our guy, and he won against the goddamn Uniparty. Mamdani won despite every single fucking member of the deep state telling him that if he doesn't personally kiss the wall in Jerusalem, that he's an anti-Semite. Maybe we know more about pragmatism, not the Twitter lefties, but, you know, the more social democratic aligned people. Not that I'm a social democrat, but if it means getting a couple, you know, laying up a couple easy wins with Mamdani, I'll take it. You know, you get what you can, I suppose. I'm sorry. I'm just venting frustration. It's not even about Contra, really. It's just, I don't think that they are liberal, the people like this. Like, I don't think Contra is being liberal. I think the actual liberals, like the Founding Fathers or Enlightenment thinkers, Locke, Rousseau, whatever, whoever you prefer, I think that they would find Contras and other Democrat stooges prescriptions in the current time to be insanely limited. I think they would be considered like very like bounded. Like, that's it, the republic is falling and this is what you have, you know? Like, your imagination is that limited. Liberals used to fight for something, man. They used to believe in something.